Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I stepped out of the taxi, the warm sun beating down on my face as I took in the grandeur of the Bellevue Hotel. Its gleaming glass facade stretched towards the sky, promising luxury and relaxation. Just what Rosemary and I needed to rekindle our strained marriage. "Arnold, can you grab the bags?" Rosemary called from behind me, her voice tinged with irritation. I turned to see her struggling with her oversized designer handbag. "Of course, dear," I replied, forcing a smile as I hefted our luggage from the trunk. As we made our way through the opulent lobby, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe this vacation would be the fresh start we needed. The marble floors gleamed beneath our feet, and the air was perfumed with the scent of exotic flowers. "Welcome to the Bellevue, Mr. and Mrs. Reed," the receptionist greeted us warmly. "We have you in one of our premium suites on the top floor. I'm sure you'll find it most comfortable." I nodded my thanks as I took the key cards. "I'm sure we will. Come on, Rosemary, let's go settle in." As we rode the elevator up, Rosemary remained engrossed in her phone. I tried to engage her in conversation. "The view from up here should be spectacular. Maybe we could have dinner on the balcony tonight?" She glanced up briefly. "Oh, yes, that sounds nice." I sighed inwardly. Getting her to put down that damn phone was like pulling teeth these days. The suite was indeed impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city and coastline beyond. I set our bags down and walked to the window, taking in the sight. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I said, turning to Rosemary. She nodded absently, already unpacking her clothes. "It's lovely. I'm going to freshen up before we head down to explore." As she disappeared into the bathroom, I poured myself a drink from the minibar and stepped out onto the balcony. The breeze ruffled my hair as I gazed out at the horizon. I had to make this work. Our marriage depended on it. Later that afternoon, we decided to check out the hotel's renowned bar and lounge. As we entered the dimly lit space, my eyes were drawn to a familiar figure seated at the bar. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be, but it was. Mickey Bradshaw, my ex-business partner and the bane of my existence, was lounging there as if he owned the place. His eyes met mine, and a smirk spread across his face. Well, he drawled, swiveling to face us. "If it isn't Arnold Reed, still licking your wounds after our little disagreement?" I felt my jaw clench. "Mickey, what an unpleasant surprise. I didn't realize they let snakes slither into establishments like this." Rosemary placed a hand on my arm. "Arnold, please. Let's just go somewhere else." Mickey's gaze shifted to her, his eyes roaming appreciatively over her figure. Now, Rosemary, don't let old Arnold here ruin your good time. Why don't you join me for a drink? I'm sure I can show you a better time than this has been." Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, grabbing Mickey by his expensive silk shirt. "Listen here, you backstabbing piece of..." "Gentlemen." A stern voice cut through the tension. We turned to see the hotel security chief approaching. "Is there a problem here?" Mickey smoothed his shirt, that infuriating smirk still plastered on his face. "No problem at all. Just catching up with an old friend. Isn't that right, Arnold?" I glared at him, my fists clenched at my sides. "We're leaving," I growled, taking Rosemary's arm and steering her towards the exit. Once we were back in our suite, I paced the room like a caged animal. "We're switching hotels. I'm not staying under the same roof as that snake." Rosemary sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Arnold, be reasonable. Do you know how much hassle that would be? Not to mention the cost. It's a big hotel. We probably won't even see him again." I wanted to argue, to insist we leave, but the pleading look in her eyes made me hesitate. Was I overreacting? Maybe she was right. I couldn't let Mickey ruin this chance to save our marriage. "Fine," I conceded grudgingly. "We'll stay. But if he so much as looks at us wrong again, we're out of here." Rosemary smiled, relief evident on her face. "Thank you, Arnold. I promise we'll have a wonderful time here." "Mickey Bradshaw be damned." I nodded, trying to push thoughts of Mickey from my mind. This vacation was about Rosemary and me. I wouldn't let my anger towards that backstabbing weasel derail our plans. As night fell, we dressed for dinner at the hotel's five-star restaurant. Rosemary looked stunning in a sleek black dress, her hair cascading over her shoulders. For a moment, I was transported back to our early days together, when every glance from her set my heart racing. Over candlelight and fine wine, we talked and laughed like we hadn't in years. It felt good, natural. Maybe there was hope for us after all. As we finished our dessert, Rosemary reached across the table and took my hand. Arnold, I'm so glad we came here. I feel like we're connecting again. I squeezed her hand, a warmth spreading through my chest. Me too, Rose. This is exactly what we needed. But as we made our way back to our suite, a nagging doubt gnawed at the back of my mind. Could one romantic dinner really fix all our problems? Or was I just seeing what I wanted to see? The next morning, I awoke to find Rosemary already dressed and applying makeup at the vanity. She smiled at me in the mirror. Good morning, sleepyhead. I was thinking of visiting some relatives nearby today. You don't mind, do you? I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Relatives? I didn't know you had family in the area. She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, just some distant cousins. I haven't seen them in years, and I thought it would be nice to catch up while we're here. Something about her tone set off alarm bells in my head. We've been married for over a decade, and I'd never heard her mention these cousins before. But I didn't want to start an argument, not when things had been going so well. Sure, if that's what you want to do, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. I'll find something to occupy myself. Rosemary beamed at me. Thanks, darling. I won't be gone too long. We'll have dinner together tonight. Okay? I nodded, watching as she gathered her purse and headed for the door. As it clicked shut behind her, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to distract myself with a workout in the hotel gym and a swim in the pool, but my mind kept circling back to Rosemary's strange behavior. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. Making a snap decision, I hurried back to our room and changed into casual clothes. I grabbed my wallet and the keys to the rental car I'd arranged for our trip, along with a baseball bat I'd brought for some impromptu practice. Better safe than sorry. As I exited the hotel, I spotted Rosemary getting into a sleek black sports car. My heart sank as I recognized the driver, Mickey Bradshaw. Rage boiled up inside me as I watched them drive away. I jumped into my rental and followed at a discreet distance, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. They drove for about an hour, finally turning off onto a secluded dirt road that led deep into the forest. I killed my engine and continued on foot, the bat clutched tightly in my hand. As I crept through the trees, I heard voices ahead. I emerged into a small clearing to find Mickey's car parked near a picturesque lake. And there, on a blanket spread out on the grass, were Rosemary and Mickey, locked in a passionate embrace. My vision went red. All the years of suspicion, all the nights lying awake wondering why my wife had grown so distant. It all crystallized in that moment. I strode forward, my footsteps muffled by the soft grass. Mickey saw me first, his eyes widening in shock. Arnold, what the? I didn't let him finish. The bat connected with the car's rear window, shattering it into 1,000 glittering pieces. Rosemary screamed, scrambling to her feet. Arnold, stop. I can explain. But I was beyond explanations. I yanked Mickey up by his collar and threw him against the car. You son of a bitch, I snarled, raining blows on him with my fists. How long? How long have you been screwing my wife? Mickey tried to defend himself, but rage gave me strength. I pummeled him mercilessly, deaf to Rosemary's pleas for me to stop. When Mickey slumped to the ground, barely conscious, I turned to Rosemary. She cowered before me, tears streaming down her face. Arnold, please, it's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Not what I think. I'm not a fool, Rosemary. How could you do this to me? With him, of all people? She reached out to me, but I recoiled from her touch. I'm sorry, she sobbed. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you. Save it, I spat. I turned back to Mickey's car, an idea forming in my mind. You two deserve each other. I rummaged through the glove compartment until I found what I was looking for. A book of matches. Without hesitation, I struck one and tossed it onto the driver's seat. The flames caught quickly, engulfing the interior of the car. Rosemary and Mickey watched in horror as their only means of transportation went up in smoke. "Arnold, what are you doing?" Rosemary cried. "How are we supposed to get back?" I turned to them, a cold smile on my face. "That's your problem now. Enjoy your little rendezvous." With that, I turned and walked away, ignoring their shouts and pleas. Let them figure out how to get back on their own. I had more important things to deal with. As I drove back to the hotel, my mind raced with plans. This betrayal wouldn't go unpunished. Mickey and Rosemary had no idea the hell I was about to rain down on them. Back at the hotel, I wasted no time. I threw our belongings into suitcases, my movements sharp and angry. Each item of Rosemary's clothing felt like a mockery, a reminder of her duplicity. As I zipped up the last bag, I heard the door open behind me. I turned to see Rosemary stumble in, her hair disheveled and her clothes smeared with dirt. She looked like she'd been through hell, and a small, vindictive part of me was glad. "Arnold," she said, her voice hoarse, "please let me explain." I crossed my arms, fixing her with a cold stare. "Go ahead. I can't wait to hear how you justify betraying our marriage." Rosemary sank onto the bed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It started when you and Mickey were still partners," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was lonely, Arnold. You were always working late, always focused on the business. Mickey, he was there. He listened. He made me feel wanted." I laughed bitterly. "So you decided to sleep with my business partner? That's your justification?" She flinched at my tone but continued. "It wasn't just physical. Mickey told me things about the business. He said you were making decisions that would ruin the company, that you weren't listening to reason. He convinced me that if I helped him, we could save the business, save our future." My blood ran cold as the implications of her words sank in. "What did you do, Rosemary?" Tears streamed down her face as she confessed. I gave Mickey information, internal documents, financial records. He said he was going to use them to convince you to change course, but instead, he leaked them to our competitors," I finished, the pieces finally falling into place. "You helped him destroy everything I'd worked for." Rosemary nodded miserably. "I'm so sorry, Arnold. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I was helping, but Mickey, he used me, used us both." I stood there, letting her words wash over me. Part of me wanted to rage, to scream, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain and betrayal coursing through me. But another part, a colder, more calculating part, saw an opportunity. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording I'd been making since she walked in. Rosemary's eyes widened as she realized what I'd done. "Arnold, what are you going to do with that?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. I pocketed the phone, my face an expressionless mask. "Whatever I damn well please," I replied coldly. "Consider it insurance. Now, listen carefully. You're not coming home with me. You're going to stay here, or go to Mickey, or crawl back to whatever family you actually have. I don't care. But if you try to come back to our house, if you try to contact me or touch our accounts, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." Rosemary stood, reaching out to me. "Arnold, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. Start over." I cut her off with a harsh laugh. "Start over? There's nothing left to save, Rosemary. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Rosemary called out one last time. "What about money? How am I supposed to?" I turned back, fixing her with a cold stare. "You should have thought about that before you decided to betray me. Figure it out yourself." With that, I walked out, leaving Rosemary alone with the wreckage of our marriage. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, a sense of grim determination settled over me. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I checked out of the hotel, ignoring the curious looks from the staff. Let them wonder. I had bigger concerns. As I drove away from the Bellevue, my mind was already racing with plans. Mickey and Rosemary thought they'd gotten the better of me, but they had no idea what was coming. I'd rebuild my business, stronger than ever, and I'd make damn sure they paid for every lie, every betrayal. The road stretched out before me, leading me back home. But home wasn't the same anymore. It was just another battlefield in the war I was about to wage. Let them enjoy their victory for now. Soon enough, they'd learn that crossing Arnold Reed was the biggest mistake of their lives. I pulled into the driveway of my suburban home, the weight of recent events pressing down on me. The house loomed before me, once a symbol of marital bliss, now tainted by betrayal. I pushed those thoughts aside. There was work to be done. Inside, I headed straight for my home office. I booted up my computer and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Francisca Bradshaw. My finger hovered over the call button for a moment. Was I really going to do this? Destroy another marriage? Then I remembered Mickey's smug face, Rosemary's tearful confession, and my resolve hardened. I hit call. Hello? Francisca's voice came through, cautious and slightly confused. Francisca, it's Arnold Reed. We need to talk. It's about Mickey. There was a pause on the other end. Arnold? What's going on? Is Mickey okay? I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, he's just fine. But I have some information you need to hear. Can we meet? An hour later, I sat across from Francisca in a quiet coffee shop downtown. Her face was a mask of concern and curiosity. What's this about, Arnold? She asked, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug. I took a deep breath. Francisca, there's no easy way to say this. Mickey's been having an affair. With my wife, Rosemary. Her eyes widened in shock. What? No, that can't be true. Mickey wouldn't. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of Rosemary's confession. Francisca's face crumpled as she listened, tears welling up in her eyes. When the recording ended, she looked up at me, her expression a mix of anger and devastation. How long? She whispered. Years, apparently, I replied, my voice hard. And that's not all. They've been working together to sabotage my business, leaking confidential information to our competitors. Francisca's hands clenched into fists. That bastard, she hissed. All those late nights at the office, the mysterious business trips. I should have known. I leaned forward, my voice low and intense. Francisca, I'm telling you this because you deserve to know the truth, but also because I think we can help each other. She met my gaze, a spark of determination in her eyes. What did you have in mind? Divorce him, I said bluntly. Take him for everything he's worth. I'll provide you with all the evidence you need. Meanwhile, I'm going after them legally for what they did to my business. Francisca nodded slowly, her jaw set. You're right. He doesn't deserve a shred of mercy. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. This is my lawyer, the best divorce attorney in the state. I think you should give him a call too. I took the card, a smile on my face. Thank you, Francisca. And I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She stood up, gathering her things. Don't be. I'm glad you told me. Mickey's the one who should be sorry. And believe me, he will be. As I watched her leave, I felt a twinge of satisfaction. The first domino had fallen. Now it was time to set the rest in motion. Back at home, I called the number on the business card. Donald Carpenter, ESQ answered on the second ring. Mr. Carpenter? This is Arnold Reed. I was referred to you by Francisca Bradshaw. I need your help with a divorce and a corporate lawsuit. I see, Carpenter replied, his voice cool and professional. Can you give me a brief overview of the situation? I laid out the basics, Rosemary's affair, the business sabotage, my plans for divorce and legal action against Mickey. Sounds like quite a mess, Carpenter said when I finished. But don't worry, Mr. Reed. We specialize in messes. Why don't you come by my office tomorrow morning? We'll go over everything in detail and start building your case. I hung up feeling a sense of cold satisfaction. The wheels were in motion. Mickey and Rosemary thought they'd gotten the better of me, but they had no idea what was coming. Over the next few days, I threw myself into work, trying to salvage what I could of my business. But it quickly became clear that the damage ran deep. Clients were pulling out of deals left and right, citing concerns about our stability and integrity. After another tense call with a now former client, I slammed the phone down in frustration. Something wasn't adding up. How were these clients getting insider information about our troubles? I picked up the phone again and dialed another number. Jerry? It's Arnold Reed. I need your services. How soon can you start? Jerry Lockwood, private investigator extraordinaire, chuckled on the other end of the line. For you, Arnold? I can start yesterday. What's the job? I need you to find out who's been leaking information to my clients. And I have a pretty good idea where to start looking. Mickey Bradshaw? Jerry guessed. Got it in one. Think you can dig up some dirt on him? Arnold, my friend. Digging up dirt is what I do best. Consider it done. As I hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Mickey thought he'd won, but the game was far from over, and I was just getting started. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, business damage control, and clandestine updates from Jerry. I threw myself into the work, letting my anger and determination fuel me through long days and sleepless nights. One rainy afternoon, as I pored over financial reports in my home office, my phone buzzed. Jerry's name flashed on the screen. Talk to me, Jerry, I answered, pushing aside the paperwork. Arnold, my man, I've got something big for you. Can you meet me at O'Malley's in an hour? I glanced at my watch. I'll be there. O'Malley's was a dimly lit Irish pub, the kind of place where conversations could be had without fear of prying ears. I spotted Jerry in a corner booth, nursing a pint of Guinness. Arnold, he greeted me as I slid into the seat across from him. You look like hell, my friend. I waved off his concern. Never mind that. What have you got for me? Jerry leaned in, his voice low. It's just as you suspected. Mickey's been busy. I've got recordings of him threatening your clients, telling them to pull out or face consequences. He's been leveraging the insider info he got from your wife to make it sound like your company's on the verge of collapse. My fists clenched under the table. That snake. Do you have proof? Jerry patted his briefcase. All right here. Audio recordings, financial trails, the works. But that's not all. He paused, taking a swig of his beer. I did some digging into Mickey's past. Turns out, this isn't the first time he's pulled something like this. I found evidence of similar schemes at his previous jobs. The man's got a pattern. I leaned back, processing this information. This is good, Jerry. Really good. But we need more. I want to bury him so deep he'll never see daylight again. Jerry nodded, a glint in his eye. I'm on it, boss. Give me another week, and I'll have enough dirt to start a garden. As I left the pub, my mind was racing with possibilities. Mickey had overplayed his hand, and now he was going to pay. Back at home, I called Donald Carpenter. Donald, it's Arnold. I've got some new information for our case. How quickly can we move on this? Depends on what you've got, Donald replied. But if it's as good as you say, we could be ready to file within days. I smiled. Oh, it's good. And I want to hit them hard and fast. No mercy. Understood, Mr. Reed. I'll start drafting the paperwork immediately. The next morning, I received another call from Jerry. Arnold, you need to get down to your office. Now. What's going on, Jerry? Just trust me. You'll want to see this for yourself. I arrived at my office building to find Jerry waiting for me in the lobby. Without a word, he led me to the elevator and up to my floor. As the doors opened, I froze. There, in my office, was Mickey Bradshaw, rifling through my desk drawers. What the hell do you think you're doing? I roared, storming into the room. Mickey's head snapped up, his face pale with shock. Arnold, I can explain. Save it, I spat. I know exactly what you're doing. Did you really think you could come in here and destroy what's left of my business? Mickey's shock quickly morphed into anger. You've got some nerve, Reed. After what you did to me and Rosemary. I laughed bitterly. What I did to you? That's rich, coming from the man who's been systematically destroying my life's work. You don't know what you're talking about, Mickey snarled, taking a step towards me. I stood my ground, my voice low. Oh, but I do. I know all about your little scheme, Mickey. The threats, the lies, all of it. And I've got proof. For a moment, I saw fear flicker in Mickey's eyes. Then his face hardened. You've got nothing. And even if you did, who's going to believe you? You're finished, Arnold. Accept it and move on. I smiled coldly. We'll see about that. Now get out of my office before I have security throw you out. As Mickey brushed past me, he leaned in close. This isn't over, Reed. I'll make sure you never work in this town again. I watched him go, my resolve stronger than ever. Mickey had no idea what was coming for him. Over the next few days, I worked closely with Donald and his team, building an ironclad case against Mickey and Rosemary. We gathered testimonies from clients, compiled financial records, and put together a damning timeline of their betrayal. Finally, the day came to file the lawsuit. I sat in Donald's office, pen poised over the final documents. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Arnold?" Donald asked one last time. "Once we file, there's no going back." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life. They tried to destroy everything I've built. Now it's time they face the consequences." With a firm hand, I signed my name. Donald gathered the papers, a look of stern satisfaction on his face. "All right then, let's go make some waves." As we left his office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was back in control. Mickey and Rosemary had no idea what was about to hit them, and I was going to enjoy every moment of their downfall. In the wake of filing the lawsuit, I found myself with an unexpected ally. Judith Irwin, a shark of a lawyer known for her ruthless tactics, reached out to offer her services. "Mr. Reed," she said over the phone, her voice sharp and confident, "I've been following your case with great interest. I believe I can help you take it to the next level." I leaned back in my chair, intrigued. "I'm listening, Ms. Irwin. Your current strategy is solid, but it lacks finesse. With my expertise, we can not only win this case but utterly destroy Mickey Bradshaw and your ex-wife in the process. Are you interested?" A slow smile spread across my face. "Ms. Irwin, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership." With Judith on board, our legal strategy took on a new, more aggressive dimension. But I knew we needed to attack on multiple fronts. That's when I remembered a name from my past: Hubert Irwin, Judith's brother, and a renowned con artist. I reached out to Hubert, outlining my plan. He listened intently, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "You want me to befriend your ex-wife, gain her trust, and then lead her down a path of financial ruin through gambling addiction?" "That's the gist of it," I confirmed. "Can you do it?" Hubert grinned. "Arnold, my friend, you've come to the right man. Consider it done." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, rebuilding my company's reputation while Judith prepared our legal assault and Hubert worked his magic on Rosemary. Hubert, posing as a wealthy businessman, accidentally bumped into Rosemary at an upscale restaurant. He played his part perfectly, charming her with his wit and apparent success. "I couldn't help but notice you dining alone," he said, flashing a winning smile. "A beautiful woman like you shouldn't be without company. May I join you?" Rosemary, flattered and lonely, agreed. And so began Hubert's carefully orchestrated con. Meanwhile, I focused on shoring up my business defenses. I called an emergency meeting with my remaining loyal employees. "I know the past few months have been challenging," I addressed the room, "but I want to thank each of you for sticking by me. Together, we're going to turn this company around and come back stronger than ever." My words were met with determined nods and murmurs of agreement. I felt a surge of pride in my team. They were fighters, just like me. As the weeks passed, reports from Hubert grew more encouraging. Rosemary had taken the bait, accompanying him to high-stakes poker games and exclusive casinos. "She's a natural," Hubert reported during one of our clandestine meetings. "Or at least, she thinks she is. I've made sure she's won just enough to keep her hooked." I nodded, satisfaction coursing through me. "Excellent work, Hubert. Keep pushing. I want her in so deep she can't see daylight." True to his word, Hubert expertly manipulated Rosemary's newfound gambling addiction. He introduced her to the owner of an exclusive casino, who I'd already arranged to give her special treatment. "Mrs. Reed," the owner greeted her warmly, "Mr. Irwin has told me so much about you. Please, enjoy our VIP lounge. Your first round of chips is on the house." Rosemary's eyes lit up with excitement. "Why, thank you. I have a feeling tonight's going to be my lucky night." Little did she know, her luck was about to run out in more ways than one. As Rosemary spiraled deeper into her addiction, Judith was making significant headway with our lawsuit. We gathered in her office one afternoon to discuss our progress. The evidence against Mickey is damning, Judith reported, a predatory gleam in her eye. His past indiscretions, combined with the proof of his recent actions, we've got him cornered. I leaned forward, eager for details. And Rosemary? Judith's smile widened. Oh, she's in just as much trouble. Her role in leaking company secrets, the affair, not to mention her recent, shall we say, financial indiscretions. The judge is going to have a field day with this. I sat back, a sense of cold satisfaction washing over me. Excellent work, Judith. When can we expect the hammer to fall? I've scheduled the first hearing for next week. Trust me, Arnold. It's going to be a bloodbath. The day of the hearing arrived, and I stood outside the courthouse, adjusting my tie. Donald and Judith flanked me, both radiating confidence. Remember, Arnold, Donald advised, let us do the talking. Your job is to sit there and look like the wrong party, which, let's face it, you are. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Let's do this. Inside, I caught my first glimpse of Mickey and Rosemary in months. They both looked haggard, the strain of recent events evident on their faces. Good. As the hearing progressed, I watched with satisfaction as Judith systematically dismantled their defenses. She presented evidence of Mickey's threats to my clients, financial records showing the damage to my company, and damning testimony from former employees about Mickey's past schemes. When it came to Rosemary, Judith was equally merciless. She laid bare the details of the affair, Rosemary's role in leaking company secrets, and even brought up her recent gambling losses. Your Honor, Judith continued, her voice sharp and confident, the evidence before you paints a clear picture of deliberate sabotage, betrayal, and fraud. Mr. Bradshaw and Mrs. Reed conspired to destroy my client's business and personal life. Their actions have caused irreparable damage, both financially and emotionally. I watched as Mickey and Rosemary squirmed in their seats. Their lawyer, a nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit, seemed overwhelmed by Judith's onslaught. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When Judith finished her presentation, she turned to Mickey and Rosemary's lawyer. Counselor, do you have anything to add in your client's defense? The lawyer stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, while we acknowledge that mistakes were made, we contend that Mr. Reed's accusations are exaggerated. My clients. Exaggerated? I couldn't help but interject, my voice dangerous. They destroyed everything I built. Mr. Reed, the judge warned, please allow your counsel to speak for you. I nodded, forcing myself to calm down. Judith placed a reassuring hand on my arm before addressing the court again. Your Honor, the facts speak for themselves. We ask that you rule in favor of Mr. Reed and grant the full amount of damages requested. The judge considered for a moment before speaking. I've heard enough. Given the overwhelming evidence presented, I'm inclined to rule in favor of the plaintiff. Mr. Reed, you will be awarded the full amount of damages as requested. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges against Mr. Bradshaw and Mrs. Reed. I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched the color drain from Mickey and Rosemary's faces. They turned to each other, panic evident in their expressions. As we left the courtroom, Judith turned to me with a triumphant smile. Congratulations, Arnold. Justice has been served. I nodded, a weight lifting from my shoulders. Thank you, Judith. Your work was impeccable. Later that evening, I sat in my study, a glass of scotch in hand, savoring the victory. The phone rang, and I answered to hear Hubert's voice. Arnold, my friend, I hear congratulations are in order. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. Indeed they are. And I hear Rosemary's luck at the casino has finally run out. Hubert chuckled. Oh, you have no idea. She's in deep, Arnold. The casino's calling in her markers. She's finished. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Mickey and Rosemary had tried to destroy me, but in the end, they'd only destroyed themselves. The divorce was finalized shortly after, with minimal financial loss on my part. The evidence of Rosemary's infidelity and involvement in the sabotage of my business ensured a fault-based settlement heavily in my favor. As I signed the final papers, I looked at Rosemary one last time. She seemed small, defeated, a far cry from the confident woman who had betrayed me. I hope it was worth it, I said coldly. She met my gaze, tears in her eyes. Arnold, I held up a hand, cutting her off. Save it, Rosemary. We're done here. With that, I walked out of the lawyer's office, leaving my old life behind. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready. It was time to rebuild, stronger than ever. I stood in my newly renovated office, gazing out at the city skyline. The past few months had been a whirlwind of legal victories and business triumphs. My company was back on track, stronger than ever. I allowed myself a small smile of satisfaction. The intercom buzzed, interrupting my moment of reflection. Mr. Reed, Donald Carpenter is here to see you. Send him in, I replied, turning to face the door. Donald entered, his usual confident demeanor slightly off. He carried a thick manila envelope under his arm. Arnold, he greeted me, his voice grave. We need to talk. I gestured to the chairs in front of my desk. What's going on, Donald? He sat down, placing the envelope on my desk. We've been served. Mickey's lawyer has filed a lawsuit against you for assault and arson. They're citing the incident in the forest. I felt the blood drain from my face. In the heat of my revenge, I'd almost forgotten about that day. What are you talking about? Donald opened the envelope, pulling out a stack of papers. They have evidence, Arnold. Rosemary's testimony, forensic reports from the burned car. It's all here. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. This is ridiculous. After everything they did to me, they're trying to play the victims? I know it's frustrating, Donald said, his tone measured. But we need to take this seriously. The evidence is compelling, and if we don't handle this carefully, you could be looking at jail time. The word jail hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood up, pacing the room. No, absolutely not. I won't let them win, Donald. Not after everything I've been through. Donald watched me, his expression grave. I understand, Arnold, and I promise you, we'll fight this with everything we've got. But you need to be prepared for a tough battle. I stopped pacing, turning to face him. What's our strategy? First, we need to go over every detail of what happened that day. Leave nothing out, Arnold. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. For the next hour, I recounted the events in the forest, from following Rosemary and Mickey to the confrontation and the burning of the car. Donald listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, he sat back, a thoughtful expression on his face. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We'll argue that you were acting under extreme emotional distress. Given the circumstances of their betrayal, we might be able to mitigate some of the charges. I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. And what about Rosemary's testimony? We'll work on discrediting her, Donald replied. Given her involvement in sabotaging your business and her recent gambling problems, we can cast doubt on her reliability as a witness. As Donald outlined our defense strategy, I felt my confidence returning. We had overcome worse obstacles. This was just another battle to be won. Over the next few weeks, we prepared for the trial. Donald worked tirelessly, building our case and preparing me for what to expect on the stand. The day of the trial arrived, and I stood outside the courthouse, adjusting my tie. Donald approached, his expression serious. Remember what we discussed, Arnold? Stay calm, stick to the facts, and let me handle the rest. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Let's do this. As we entered the courtroom, I caught sight of Mickey and Rosemary. Mickey looked smug, while Rosemary avoided my gaze. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to remain composed. The trial began, and I watched as Mickey's lawyer presented their case. He painted a vivid picture of my unhinged behavior in the forest, emphasizing the physical harm to Mickey and the destruction of property. When it was our turn, Donald rose, his voice steady and confident. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you've heard today is a carefully crafted narrative designed to portray my client as a violent aggressor. But let me ask you this. What would you do if you discovered your spouse and trusted business partner betraying you in the most intimate way possible? He went on to detail the extent of Mickey and Rosemary's betrayal, both personal and professional. I could see some of the jurors nodding sympathetically. When it came time for me to take the stand, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. Mickey's lawyer approached, a predatory gleam in his eye. "Mr. Reed, can you explain why you followed your wife that day?" I took a deep breath, remembering Donald's coaching. I had suspicions about her behavior. Given recent events with our business, I felt I needed to know the truth. "And when you saw her with Mr. Bradshaw, you lost control, didn't you?" I met his gaze steadily. "I was overcome with emotion, yes. Discovering your wife's infidelity and your business partner's betrayal simultaneously is not something one can prepare for." The questioning continued, each side presenting their arguments. As the trial progressed, I could see the jury was conflicted. The evidence against me was strong, but our narrative of betrayal and emotional distress seemed to resonate. Finally, after days of testimony and arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. The wait was excruciating. Donald and I sat in silence, both lost in our own thoughts. When the jury returned, I held my breath, my heart pounding. The foreman stood, her voice clear in the hushed courtroom. "On the charge of assault, we find the defendant, Arnold Reed, guilty. On the charge of arson, we find the defendant guilty." I felt the blood drain from my face. Donald placed a steadying hand on my arm as the judge prepared to announce the sentence. "Mr. Reed, please rise," the judge said, her voice stern. "While this court acknowledges the emotional circumstances surrounding your actions, we cannot condone taking the law into your own hands. I hereby sentence you to 6 months in jail and order you to pay a fine of $50,000. I stood there, stunned. This couldn't be happening. After everything I'd been through, after all I'd accomplished, to end up here. Donald leaned in, his voice low. "It's not over, Arnold. We'll appeal, and I'll work on getting the sentence reduced. This is a setback, but we're not finished." As I was led away, I caught sight of Mickey's triumphant smile, but instead of breaking me, it only fueled my determination. This wasn't the end. It was just another obstacle to overcome. The cold metal of the jail cell door clanged shut behind me, the sound echoing through the sterile corridor. I stood there for a moment, taking in my new reality. 6 months. It wasn't a lifetime, but in that moment, it felt like an eternity. "Reed, over here," a gruff voice called out. I turned to see a burly guard beckoning me. Time for processing. As I followed him, my mind raced with thoughts of my business, my life outside these walls. I'd worked so hard to rebuild, and now this setback threatened to undo everything. The guard led me to a small room where another inmate was mopping the floor. He looked up as we entered, his eyes widening in recognition. "Holy shit, you're Arnold Reed," he exclaimed. "The business tycoon who took down his cheating wife and partner. You're a legend, man." I was taken aback by his enthusiasm. Thanks, I guess." The guard rolled his eyes. "All right, Johnson. Enough fanboying. Get back to work." He turned to me. "Ignore him, Reed. Let's get you settled in." Over the next few days, I fell into the monotonous routine of jail life. Wake up, breakfast, work detail, free time, dinner, lights out. Rinse and repeat. But I refused to let this place break me. Instead, I used the time to plan, to strategize. During my free time, I hit the gym hard, channeling my frustration into physical improvement. I also spent hours in the library, brushing up on business literature and legal texts. Knowledge was power, and I was determined to come out of this experience stronger than ever. One day, about a month into my sentence, I received a visitor. To my surprise, it was Jerry Lockwood, my private investigator. "Jerry," I greeted him as I sat down at the visitation table. "What brings you here?" Jerry leaned in, his voice low. "I've been keeping tabs on things outside, Arnold. Thought you might want an update." I nodded eagerly. "What's the situation?" "Your company's holding steady. Your team's doing a good job keeping things afloat in your absence. But—" He hesitated. "But what, Jerry? Spit it out." He sighed. "Mickey's been making moves. Trying to poach some of your clients, spreading rumors about the company's stability without you at the helm." I felt a surge of anger, but forced myself to remain calm. "That snake never quits, does he?" "All right, Jerry, I need you to do something for me." "Name it," Jerry replied without hesitation. I want you to compile a dossier on Mickey's activities since the trial, every client he's approached, every rumor he's spread, and I want you to work with my legal team. Find a way to shut him down for good." Jerry grinned. "Now that's the Arnold Reed I know. Consider it done, boss." As he left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This setback was temporary. Mickey might think he'd won, but he had no idea what was coming. The months passed, and I threw myself into self-improvement. I worked out relentlessly, my body growing stronger and leaner. I devoured books on business strategy and law, my mind sharpening with each passing day. I also made connections among the other inmates, carefully cultivating relationships that could prove useful in the future. And here, information was currency, and I made sure to stay well informed about the goings on both inside and outside the prison walls. Finally, the day of my release arrived. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath of fresh air. Donald was waiting for me, a smile on his face. "Welcome back to the land of the free, Arnold," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You ready to get back to work?" I grinned, feeling energized and focused. "More than ready, Donald. We've got a lot to do." As we drove back to the city, Donald filled me in on the state of affairs. "Your team's done an admirable job in your absence, but they'll be glad to have you back. We've managed to keep most of your clients, despite Mickey's efforts." I nodded, already formulating plans in my mind. "Good. And what about the information Jerry's been gathering?" Donald's smile turned predatory. "Oh, we've got more than enough to bury Mickey once and for all. He's been sloppy, Arnold. Overconfident. We're going to make him regret ever crossing you." As we pulled up to my office building, I saw a crowd of employees gathered outside. They burst into applause as I stepped out of the car. The sight filled me with determination. These people had stood by me, had kept my dream alive in my absence. I owed it to them to come back stronger than ever. I raised a hand, acknowledging their support, then strode into the building. It was time to get back to work. Mickey thought he'd seen the last of me, but he was about to learn a harsh lesson. Arnold Reed doesn't stay down for long. Weeks turned into months as I threw myself back into work with renewed vigor. The company, which had managed to stay afloat in my absence, began to thrive once more under my leadership. Every day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities for growth and success. One evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, my assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Reed, there's a Miss Samantha Collins here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." I frowned, not recognizing the name. "Send her in," I said, curious about this unexpected visitor. A moment later, a woman entered my office. She was striking, with intelligent eyes and an air of quiet confidence. "Mr. Reed," she said, extending her hand, "I'm Samantha Collins. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." I shook her hand, intrigued. "What can I do for you, Miss Collins?" She smiled, a determined glint in her eye. "Actually, I'm here to discuss what I can do for you. I represent a group of investors who are very interested in partnering with your company on a new venture." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? And what makes you think I'm looking for new partners?" Samantha didn't miss a beat. "Because you're Arnold Reed. You don't just rebuild, you innovate. You take setbacks and turn them into opportunities. And I believe we have an opportunity that will interest you greatly." Her words caught me off guard. It had been a long time since someone had seen me so clearly, had understood my drive. "All right, Miss Collins, you've got my attention. Let's hear this proposal of yours." For the next hour, Samantha laid out a bold plan for expansion into emerging markets. Her knowledge was impressive, her strategy sound. But what struck me most was her passion, her unwavering belief in the potential of this venture. As she finished her presentation, I sat back, considering. "This is intriguing, Miss Collins. But why come to me? Surely there are other, less controversial figures you could approach." Samantha met my gaze steadily. "Because you've proven you can weather any storm, Mr. Reed. Your resilience, your ability to come back stronger after every setback, that's exactly what this venture needs." Her words resonated with me. I stood up, walking to the window to gather my thoughts. After a moment, I turned back to her. "I appreciate your candor, Miss Collins. Let's continue this discussion over dinner." I have a feeling we have a lot more to talk about. Over the next few weeks, Samantha and I met frequently, refining the proposal and discussing its implementation. I found myself drawn not just to her business acumen, but to her as a person. She was kind, compassionate, and understood me in a way few others did. One evening, as we wrapped up a particularly productive meeting, Samantha hesitated before leaving. "Arnold," she said, using my first name for the first time. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but would you like to grab a coffee sometime? Not for business, just to talk?" I felt a warmth in my chest that I hadn't experienced in years. "I'd like that very much, Samantha." As our relationship deepened, both personally and professionally, I found myself healing from the scars of my past. Samantha's presence in my life brought a sense of balance and fulfillment I'd been missing. Months passed, and our business venture flourished. The company expanded into new markets, surpassing even our most optimistic projections. But more importantly, I had found a partner who truly understood and supported me. One crisp autumn morning, I woke early, a sense of purpose driving me. "I need to take care of something," I told Samantha over breakfast. "Would you come with me?" She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. Of course. We drove for hours, finally turning onto a familiar dirt road. As we stepped out of the car, I took a deep breath, memories of that fateful day flooding back. Samantha squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I nodded, leading her into the clearing by the lake. It looked different now, peaceful in the morning light. I pulled a small stone from my pocket, one I'd carried with me since my time in jail. "This place," I said, my voice steady, "is where everything fell apart. But it's also where my new life began, in a way." I placed the stone on the ground, a simple marker of all that had transpired. Samantha wrapped her arms around me, her presence grounding and comforting. "And now?" she asked softly. I turned to her, a smile on my face. "Now, we look forward. The past is behind us. It's time for a new chapter." As we walked back to the car, hand in hand, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been long and difficult, filled with betrayal, revenge, and hardship. But standing here now, with Samantha by my side and a bright future ahead, I knew that every step had been necessary. The man who had stood in this clearing years ago, consumed by rage and betrayal, was gone. In his place stood a stronger, wiser version of myself, one who had learned from his mistakes, who had found a way to move forward without being weighed down by the past. As we drove away, leaving the forest and its memories behind, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead. Samantha smiled at me from the passenger seat, her eyes full of warmth and understanding. "Ready for our next adventure?" she asked. I grinned back, feeling truly content. "With you by my side?" "Absolutely." And as we sped towards the future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them. Not with anger or a desire for revenge, but with wisdom, strength, and the support of someone who truly understood me. The past was behind us. The future, bright and full of promise, was ours for the taking. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.